to Power and Perspective. I am April. No, this this is Aaron. And we reframe conversations with empathy and humor. Today we have Tony Lombardi on talking about dad's rights in the courts and process of divorce and things like that. Welcome, Tony. Thank you for joining us.
How are you guys doing?
Excellent. So, there's a bug in here.
Hopefully not as big as the ones in Missouri that you're talking about.
Yeah, this one's very tiny, very tiny. This is that bug's like poop bug that's on that bug's poop. Yeah, that is like
Okay.
very. Uh, so today we're talking about like divorce and rights, and Aaron and I will just share our perspective on this. I have been divorced and I have children. That's about the only perspective I bring to this. My divorce was very simple and very fast, and there was not any disagreement. So I don't have any perspective really on the situation. Aaron?
And
Thank you,
now I'm not
Steven.
muted. Thanks, Steven. I missed a step. So going back.
He said such good things, guys. It was like gold.
And it'll never be heard by anyone.
It was awesome.
So I was introduced to like the entire idea by a guy named Chris Cole, who's the director of Victims of Family Law, who was having some issues. And after hearing about it, it all kind of coalesced into my general feelings about the court system and how everything's a little bit masturbatory and all that. So I don't have any personal experience. Everything is theoretical, like most episodes. But I try to do all the reading to compensate for my inherent biases, which are hard to overcome. But yeah, the court systems suck in general, so that I understand with great.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, Aaron knows, probably even not having been married or divorced or having children, probably knows more than me. Really on all topics, let's be honest.
Well, and it's good. I mean, it's good that not everybody has to go through the court system, and I think it's just as valuable a lesson that as people in relationships that you have to be able to try to avoid that at all costs.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And everybody wins in that way, unless there's other things at work.
Yeah. Hey there, Marcy. Hello. Marcy, Tony Marcy says hi.
Hi, Marcy. I can't see that.
No,
right?
you can't see it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hi,
I mean,
Marcy.
you'd have to have a different screen up and everything. So Tony, why don't you tell us a little bit about you and your story, and how things went for you?
Okay. Well, hello. My name's Tony Lombardi. My story is that actually it's ironic. I'm literally downstairs in my parents' house right now. My dad's upstairs in hospice care. He's at I'd say probably 24 hours, give or take. And my dad, probably the most influential man in my life. He's was a football coach like myself, and but the values I was taught growing up as a young person was, yes, I was driven professionally and those sorts of things, but really, my mom's sitting upstairs with him right now, 60-year marriage, one of those ridiculous, still holding hands every day, love affair, that it's just like, Ward Cleaver and, this sort of thing. And really an amazing relationship. four siblings. I'm one of four siblings. I'm the oldest. Really a cool family. I mean, we've all been here this week, had an opportunity to kind of have some closure with my dad and those sorts of things. But I think it's pertinent. I think we forget, and I am not speaking for all men at all. I promise you. And this is not a gender. I don't have any gender-based feelings on this. This has just been my experience. But my values were, what was most important to me in my life was to be a good husband and a good father. And but combined with that, of course, was this cultural dogma that would suggest that I also have to provide and do all these other sorts of things. So, while I'm going through life and making decisions such as I was single for 10 years or so after graduation from college. I didn't get married till I was, 32, 30, whatever, something like that. Well, anyway, the point is, yeah, pursued my my individual professional goals, was a college football coach, then became a pro football coach, and I was going to go, that was what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a pro football coach, and it was going great. And I got married, and
then it went to hell in a handbasket.
Well, no, and I don't want to give that impression, but
I'm kidding.
And in fairness to my wife, it's a ridiculous schedule. You're out on the road recruiting all the time. It's horrible. And she's like, I can't do it. So I said, okay. And I meant it. I mean, I totally understand. So, and again, my values were I want to be a good husband and a good father. And so totally understandable. I'm gone all the time. I'm out on the road recruiting. And when I'm home, I'm not home because I'm in the office late, and it's a 12-month deal. So I gladly I go from making hundreds of thousands of dollars to being a high school teacher and coach. And I did that for 15 years. I don't want to give the wrong, I happily did that because it gave me an opportunity to, I was the guy who got to pitch batting practice to my sons at Little League, or take my daughters to volleyball, or, because I was teaching and coaching at the high school. And so they could come to school and they could work on volleyball, or they could throw, or they could run track or whatever. And I knew that. I totally knew that because my dad, like I said, how I started the conversation, my dad was that guy. My dad raised me and my siblings, and we all were, in my family, very athletic. So I only give you that background to understand that I wanted to be it was important to me to be a dad.
Yeah.
And absolutely nothing in the court system supports that. So when you get a divorce, if there is a custody dispute, as an example, well, all divorce in my state, in Iowa, first of all, it's like, it would be like buying a car. When you buy a car, they don't just, they sit you down with a salesman, but then a salesman sends you into the finance guy, and each step along the way, there's a revenue stream opportunity built in.
Yep.
That's exactly the way the family court system works. You get in there, you hire. I'm thinking like you guys are thinking, oh, let's just, we'll talk amongst ourselves. We'll mutually divide our assets. And I'm thinking on Tuesday night, I'm going to call you up and say, hey, do you want me to take the kids to soccer, or do you want to take the kids to soccer? I was smoking weed, man. That was not at all the way it was going to go. I thought that we were just going to co-parent. Everybody was going to live happily ever after. So I go through mediation. Well, mediation, that's a $15,000 process, and they have a vested interest in mediation not going well, because if mediation doesn't go well, then you go to court. Well, court's another $25,000, and then if you want to appeal that, then you have to go back. And long story short, I think I went through the court system, mediation court, like 4 times, and on every time, the court system agreed that the decree needed to be followed, and I would keep telling them that when I come, the kids aren't there, and she would say that, well, it's the kid's choice. It's always the kid's choice. Kid doesn't, well, she doesn't want to see his dad. She's 8. She doesn't have. What do you mean she doesn't want to see her dad? Every time she sees me, we have a great time. I have pictures. I have all this kind of stuff, and they don't want to hear. Nobody wants to hear any of that crap. So it's, for me personally, it was a very difficult process. And when you go through the system, they sit you there's a interrogatory statement where they send the woman and the man a copy of what was your contribution. What did you feel your spouse's contribution was? Like she said, I had less than 5% contribution to raising my children. And I was like, thought that was ridiculous, because every day of my life, I had a kid in tow, or usually 4 or 5. But what she knew that I didn't know, because she had been preparing for this escape for years, unbeknownst to me. So she'd met with, attorneys and all these sorts of things. And what the court system standard is like, okay, who feeds the kids breakfast? Who drives the kids to school? Who drives the kids to practice? Who does the laundry? These are the questions, and there's like 12 of them, and there's no question on, okay, who bought the house? Who has a doctorate degree? Who works 3 jobs to make sure that the kids can play in all these club sports? And there, no question about that. Who takes the kids to church? That's not on there. So I couldn't believe it. I opened this thing up and I read what the questions were, and I knew it was funny. Like I had visions of grandeur, and then I read these 12 questions, and I knew I'm never going to see my kids, because just the way it was written, there was no way. If don't get me wrong, I would have been more than happy to do the laundry, but
Yeah.
But somebody had to buy the 5-bedroom, $550,000 house that we were living in Des Moines, and so
and you would have done the laundry if you knew, oh, if I do the laundry, I get to see my kids. Is that how this works?
Or if that supposedly meant more, and it's not some arbitrary quantification of parental ability.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's like, like I said, my dad's this amazing mentor of not just a father, but he's done this for thousands of kids. My phone's blowing up with all these kids. And I was that guy who never let any situation pass, meaning, the kid succeeded at something, made sure that he felt really good about it. Kid failed at something. Hey, no problem. You didn't really fail. It's just what a great growth opportunity. You're always doing those sorts of things. There's nowhere in there that. Yeah, no, there's no box for that. So it's heartbreaking, like to this day. I've got my dad's, like I said, I'm sitting here with my father, and I cannot get my children to come visit their they're not allowed to come visit their grandfather.
Oh my God.
Who's this amazing mentor of a man, who's one of these most highly respected guys in the Chicago area. He's in the Hall of Fame. And his own grandchildren can't reap the benefit of spending time with him, just to absorb some of his teachings and some of his knowledge and some of his empathy and the things that he brings to the table. My children have been deprived of that. And when I go to guardian ad litem's, the steps you're supposed to take through the court system. In fact, my 2 parents from Chicago drove to Des Moines on their own and met with the guardian ad litem and said, you guys have created this narrative that makes my son into a monster, and my son is an amazing parent and has been, and she's like, I really agree with you, and then did nothing about it.
Wow.
Yeah. It's just very, very lax. Like, you're not people. And I feel like this is slightly reminiscent of the foster care episode that we did where the kids went into foster care. It's a system that is not based on people. It is a system based on a structure. It's based on a structure, and people don't always fit into a structure, and you try to make them fit. Just like every system in the government, like the education
and now it
system,
exists
right?
because it exists. Like, it doesn't.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, they put in place, they want to, they want to make it appear like, okay, we have this advocate for the children, the guardian ad litem. It says right in my decree that the guardian ad litem will stay on throughout the length of this, not just the divorce, but her job is to follow the children through the process. So now you have, listen, I've researched this since 2015, since this started. So since 2015, I have not, my three oldest children have probably spent, I don't want to embellish this, I would say maybe 10 nights total under my roof since 2015.
Wow.
And this does not, I showed up if I was supposed to have parenting time, I was there. And the kids would have, I made the mistake. Now think about this. I'll ask you guys a question. So I'm a parent who cares about my kids. My kids loved athletics. So I put, like an idiot, right in there that I would always make, be willing to work around the kids' activities relative to parenting time. I just as a reasonable standard, I knew that was important to them, and that I certainly understand. I would do that. And what that turned into was if it was my weekend, because she scheduled everything. So every time it was my weekend, there was a volleyball tournament. There was an event that they had to go to. When I would go to the attorneys, what do I do? The attorney's like, well, we could file a contempt charge, but do you really want to do that? Because now your children, you're going to appear to be this bully. You're going to, send your ex. And that was really bad. I can't even speak to the fact whether or not the system would have worked had I have had the courage to go in there and week after week after week file contempt charges, because I've seen it. They don't really do much the first 10 times. So again, then you appear to be the person who's antagonistic in this process, even though you're not. You're trying to be.
And they'll take it as more data for the narrative that they're creating. Did you guys have to take parenting classes?
Oh yeah.
Oh.
And I did that.
She clearly gained nothing from that.
Well, again, I've done a lot of research on this, and this is I want you to know that I'm very much aware that there are many people who are having squabbles over parenting time. This is different. This is, I have not seen my daughters in 3 years. And to the point that I've had one daughter accuse me of sexual assault. I can't even speak. I don't even know what to say. I mean, I don't know what could have even been. I'm never alone. Like I said, I don't ever see them.
Yeah.
I had them at my parents' house for Christmas when this allegation was supposedly she was in a room full of 25 people in a 3-bedroom house. And I went into a room with her for 3 minutes to tell her that I had bought her AirPods for Christmas, and they weren't going to be, she wasn't going to have a package to open because I they were sold out in the stores, and I had to get them shipped, and they weren't going to be here, and I was really teary. I mean, I felt terrible. It's Christmas. They're not going to be here, and so I pulled her into a room to talk to her about that, and literally for like 6 feet off the kitchen where there was 17, 20 people for, I'd say, 3 minutes. And that's allegedly when something inappropriate happened, which I can't even fathom what the hell that's about. But
the biggest thing I can't understand is, well, I mean, I guess sadly I can understand, is that how mothers can not see how this destroys children. You know what I mean?
Your perfect point, April. And I also want to make for your audience that this is not, there are fathers who are doing this exact same thing. So this is not, I want to make that clear.
Oh, yes.
As April says, mothers, and I agree. But it happens on both sides. So it's really not gender based as much it is, but you're right. It's what I've learned is it's really a problem in the NPD. If you have narcissistic personality disorder, so I'm not talking about you have we're all a little narcissistic. Yeah. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that you have a narcissistic personality disorder. You have a real problem with this because those you don't see anybody as anything more than a tool that you are using to fuel your narcissistic, so almost all parental, what I've learned in this is that, and think about it, if you know people who have been through divorce or maybe there's alcoholism or think of any trait that you can imagine, kids intuitively are going to gravitate. You're in education. Kids are going to gravitate to their parent, no matter how flawed that parent is.
Oh, yeah.
I don't care if there's alcohol involved. I don't care if there's drugs involved. I don't care if there's physical abuse about kids. Like, we have to protect it. We have to pull kids away from those parents.
Yeah.
So when all of a sudden 5 children are aligned with one parent against another parent, it's almost impossible that was an organic situation. Yeah. It had to have been a forced, orchestrated situation, which this is my frustration, is how does the court system not, when that happens, immediately red flags should go up, and those kids should be pulled, into some neutral third-party counseling to where, those kids can get some help. This is about these kids. I think about, like right now, I'm thinking about my 3 daughters who are going through life, and they're now going to have to live their lives as daughters of a fatherless home. And we've all seen the data and the statistical information on that. And they have a father right here who I would give my right arm to be involved in their lives. And I'm good at it. I'm a good parent. And I'm not allowed to do that. Well, that's ridiculous.
So you said, go ahead.
Well, I mean, it's the problem. I mean, with the court system, like we were discussing, is the adversarial nature of it. Even I talk about law enforcement and stuff all the time, but it's way different with this because you have 2 separate people who are going in, and if you get to that point, there's already an adversarial relationship, and all it's gonna do, it seems to me, based on what I've read and what I've seen, is that it's just going to exacerbate that adversarial relationship. And it's not necessarily absolutely intentional. It's just the way our court system works, and it makes it impossible. It makes it completely blind to any kind of reality in that case.
Yeah,
absolutely. And you're advised, like in my case, you're advised. She made false allegations, even sitting in the from day one. And I was told, don't just take the high road. Don't be argumentative. Which I did. So I said, I said, well, none of that
That's
occurred, but that
true.
was it. I was just very quiet. Didn't, I was because the narrative was going to be, look, I'm a football coach. I'm animated. I have a strong physical presence. Um, and in my profession, um, words like intensity, being driven, being having high expectations and high standards and all that. Okay, those sound like, well, think about that for a minute. Think of how those words could sound if twisted in a court environment. That,
Yeah.
okay, this guy's intense, he's driven, he's think about how that's received when you're deciding, okay, where is a safe environment for the kids? And
Yeah.
uh, you, you're screwed.
Yeah.
Even though that's not I mean, that's who I am on it. We all have professions. If whatever you're doing at work is not necessarily, that's what you do. That's not who
It's not
you
who
are.
you are.
Yeah.
You know what? You were mentioning that you didn't think that this was a gender thing, but I think even that statement can show gender bias in the courts because it's not often a female is described as intense or
Absolutely.
overworking. You know what I mean? So like it's
Absolutely.
a natural bias. Do you think that going, and I know that this happens reverse, but I would bet to say that it's typical of this direction where the mother is kind
It's
of is controlling the
statistically,
narrative.
yes. I don't, but I don't want to offend anybody
No,
yeah,
that's what we do.
statistically, absolutely, it is far more slanted to,
Yeah.
this is why,
Even that questionnaire was slanted.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Like
And
it's gender roles exist, and typically, not always, but typically women do the laundry, women feed the kids. Like, so you're
right.
basically creating a questionnaire to support the mother.
Yeah, they know that. I mean, whoever wrote that questionnaire absolutely knows that. This is my bitch. It's like, okay, put that in there. That's fine. But, um, in my case, like I said, I had these kids who I hope it was their choice, but I was involved in athletics, so their way to stay kind of involved with me was to be involved in athletics. So boom, you bring them along, and here's what, okay, all that. Can I say bullshit on this place?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, okay.
You're encouraged.
Sorry. Okay.
You just
Well,
can't sing Frozen songs.
Oh,
okay.
jeez.
Oh my gosh. No, you wouldn't want to hear me sing anything from Frozen. But I have 3 daughters, so I'm quite familiar with it. But anyway, I think that the bullshit of, and you're right, it's so slanted between the men and the women in the family court system. But that being said, what bothers me is, because ultimately what it's all about is these children. So this, by perpetuating that narrative, I have 2 alpha male sons who are trying to be college football players who have been traumatized into believing that all of the qualities that they possess through me are horrible. So now I've got 2 guys that are I got one guy who's trying to make it to the NFL, who's convinced that intensity, work ethic, high expectations, being demanding of yourself are horrible qualities. Think about that. Think about what that does to a kid who's trying to navigate that journey. But in his head, he has this narrative that, oh, these are horrible. So now he's constantly in conflict. His coaches are trying to demand this of him, but he has a voice in his head. Well, that's bad. Well, that's bad. I can't be that way.
Yeah.
My dad was that way, and it destroyed. So what they also saw is a guy who was, don't get me wrong, but within my little environment was kind of a celebrity. I was the best known high school football coach in Iowa, had this huge winning program, and was destroyed because she went out in public, made some allegations. We all know on social media now, this stuff gets on social media. None of it was true, but it doesn't matter. If you say, well, this guy is verbally abusive of his athletes, well, what does verbally abusive mean? That the football coach yells at the wide receiver or something, maybe?
Right.
Okay. And so anyway, all this narrative, and I've got now mind you, the players, there's no, like, kids love me.
Yeah.
I mean, kids love me and there's no complaints. But there, all of a sudden there's this undertone of this narrative in town, and it's on literally on the news. There is a story breaking that football coach at Cedar Rapids, Washington is under investigation. I'm sitting next to my son, Rocky, watching this, and they run a pen through the name. They don't want to name anybody, of course, on this complaint. But you can see on the HDTV, you can see through the black marker what the name is.
Oh
and
my gosh.
And you know who the name was? Rocky Lombardi, my own son. So guess who filed that complaint?
Wow.
Wow.
So he at the time is 13, and he says, "Dad, is this about me?" And I said, "Well, what do you say?" At this point, that's when it hit me in the head. I know what's going on here. And I have to say, and so Rocky says, "Well, this is great. None of that ever happened. I'll just call the TV station and tell them it didn't happen." I'm like, "Son,
it doesn't even matter anymore.
It doesn't work that way." Now I've been on the news. Momentum happens. My life falls apart. I lose my job. My kids see this. So now it reinforces that narrative to my children. Oh my God, all these qualities that I thought were good about my dad are bad. And so now even my daughter, it shouldn't limit it to my son. My daughters are athletes. My daughters are, highly intense, competitive volleyball players. And they're conflicted because they're like, I don't want to be too competitive because, again, those were the words that were used to describe me, not only in a court of law, but then on TV.
Wow.
So it's an amazing journey for my children.
So when you paid to go, you talked about each step and the money it took for each step. This is going to be a very ignorant question. You have to pay your lawyers. Do you pay the court?
Yes. That's a great question. So the first step would be mediation. So this is an amazing part. Now imagine this. Now we're deciding the future of 5 beautiful children here. Okay. These are 5 great kids. And you have to pay for this process, and then you also have to pay the mediator. The mediator is just another attorney. So, and they don't want any conflict. So, your wife, the woman sits in one room, the guy sits in another room. We're each represented by lawyers, and then there's a third lawyer president who's the mediator. They go. So these 3 men or women, who it doesn't matter, but these 3 attorneys are going between the two parties, and they're deciding your fate. It's literally that ridiculous. They go, and so and unbeknownst to me, she's saying, and I'm saying, "Oh, no problem. I'll take the kids. Take the kids on Wednesday. I'll do whatever." And she's going, "Oh, he's a miserable, horrible excuse of a human being. I'm scared of him. The kids are scared of him. He's intense. He's competitive. He's all these sorts of things." I have no idea this is going on because I'm not there to defend myself. I'm not allowed.
Yeah.
She's in one room. I'm in another. So there's never any interaction to really get to the truth. So if somebody wants to tell a complete story, narrative, and somebody's in the other room trying to be cooperative,
yeah,
you're going to get rolled over.
You're going to get I tell men, listen, now if one of my friends thinks there's an inkling, I tell them, file now. There's like they have a petitioner and a respondent. Okay. Those words are important. A petitioner and a respondent. Of course, I would have stayed, like I said, what the most important things in my life was to be a husband and a father. I was going to work it out, but she petitioned and I responded, and that has been exactly the way it's been for I. As I said, she destroyed my reputation so bad. I could not get. I just told you I coach college and pro football. I couldn't get a head high school job, and I've won about 87% of my games, which is ridiculous. And I could not get hired because there was this undercurrent of that he'd been verbally abusive somewhere. But I loved coaching. So what I did was I allowed myself to I started taking worse and worse jobs. I was like an assistant coach, middle school. All of a sudden, this guy who was a pro football player, I'm teaching middle school PE in Indiana as an assistant coach, which was destroying me as a human being for $42,000 a year. And a guy who's used to making six figures. So the whole time this is going on, the court system, because when she filed, I was making six figures. So what do you think I'm paying in child support?
On the six figures.
Yes. So I'm living on like $600 to $800 a month. I'm renting bedrooms in basements of homes. I'm living with my parents. This goes on. This never ends. This divorce was in 2015. Finally, after 5 years of beating my head up against the wall, I gave up the profession I loved about a year and a half ago, and I got a job in business. And I'm doing better financially because what would happen was every coaching job I would take, anonymous phone calls would get made to my employer, and
Wow.
I'm always on watch. So now, fast forward like 6 years later, I'm doing better. And again, I'm working with Dave. Dave's trying to get me to live in a higher vibration life. So I do something now. I've got 5 kids, so I've never bought myself. You can imagine. I literally worked. You've been around education. I had 5. I was a teacher, master's plus 60, so I had a decent salary. But then I also ran the weight room, which was, say, a $5,000 extra duty stipend. I was a head football coach, so there's an extra duty stipend there. I was an assistant track coach. There's a stipend there. I was a head baseball coach. There's a stipend there. So I made decent money. But if you understand education, you also understand that I was working 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. I worked all summer. So these are jobs you're working. That's why you're making more money. So that all went away because now I'm teaching at a middle school and I'm making like $40,000 a year. So you go to the courts and I say, hey, can I get some relief here? You know what they say? No. And not only that, you can no longer write the check. We are going to garnish your wages.
Wow.
So I never see a penny of that money. So now, okay, but I want to know. Now this started in 2015. Finally, I'm back to where I'm still making 35, 40,000 less than I used to, but I'm making a reasonable wage. But I'm working with Dave, and Dave says, what are you doing for yourself? So I go out and I buy a used car. But it's an Audi. It's a nice car. But I mean, it was a $30,000 car. It's not a $150,000 car. This just happened now. This divorce is 2015. A month ago, I'm at work and I get served. And she is taking me back to court to get more child support because she thinks she's not getting enough right now. Then So I get served. I'm devastated. I'm almost have PTSD from this crap. I'm not
Yeah.
kidding. There's a knock on the door. I'm like, what? And I see I'm getting served. I know right away it's something relative to my kids, whom, by the way, I don't see.
Yeah.
So I don't see these kids, but she wants more money for them. Then on top of that, I get a random email like 4 days later from my kids' volleyball club. Now I pay $20,000 a year in child support, and it's just garnished out of my wages. I never see it. So I get a letter from their volleyball club. Hey, your daughters haven't paid. They owe $3,000 for volleyball. I'm wondering if you could pay it. I'm like, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I do pay it. I don't control how that money gets allocated. So I don't know what to tell you, but I'm not responsible to make that payment. Now first of all, I don't know how this person has well, I do know. Someone had to go to this person and give them my email address. Okay. So I get an email, but this is how the manipulation, this is how the triangulation works. Okay. So I get an email from the club director. Okay. I respond to the club very reasonably. I said, listen, I know you're caught in the middle of this. I totally understand, but I can't. If I pay this bill, I've already been to this movie. I pay every bill.
Yeah.
So she says, I totally understand. Within 12 hours, I get a text from my two daughters. We're blocking you. You don't care about us. You're not going to pay for our volleyball. Because this is how this works. This is how this parental alienation works. They create a lose-lose. You send the letter. Either I pay for that, or I go to your daughters and say, he doesn't give a shit about you. And now my daughters think I don't, rightfully so, they're 15 years old. He must not care about us. And I'm like, no, I do care. I said, but I haven't
child
seen
abuse.
Yes,
this is literally child abuse.
Of course, it's child abuse. Absolutely, 100% child. Because again, forget all this. Okay, Tony's getting screwed.
Yeah.
Think about these two little girls. My little girl, my youngest daughter, and again, it's just like, now I'm going to piss off everybody politically, but
go for it.
It's about control. This has nothing to do with kids. This is 100% about control. So you have to create an environment where your children need you. Not that you're being an effective parent, but that they have to have you. So my youngest daughter, Gabby, has, and this is in the decree, this absolutely cannot be done without both parents agreeing to this. But in 5 years, my daughter Gabby has been in 5 schools, and back when we were having contact, she's calling me on the phone tearfully, Dad, I don't fit in anywhere. No shit. You've been in 5 schools in 5 years. How could you possibly fit in? It's not your fault. But again, think about being the alienating parent, you move that kid school to school to school to school.
Oh, they're more dependent on you.
You insulate them from any external relationships.
Absolutely. They become dependent on you. Or in this girl's case, she lives in Des Moines, Iowa. Guess where her volleyball club is? Waterloo, Iowa, 2 hours away. So she plays at a high level. So this is 3 nights a week of practice and every weekend. So that becomes your social group. Where's her social group? 2 hours away. So she's spending 2 hours, 4 hours commuting to practices. I have zero to say about this. This is my child. And moving her in 5 different schools and creating this poor young woman who's convinced that she's broken.
Yeah.
She's not broken. There's nothing wrong with her. She's being abused.
Yes.
And it should be,
Absolutely.
and all that moving should be a red flag. Like all of these things seem
Yes.
like I
Right
understand.
on the,
I understand the not, and don't take my understand as agree, but how when you acquiesce that it helps create a narrative, no matter what you do, and you have that endless cycle of no matter what you do, you can be the bad guy. But when you see things like that, something that the court could see that she's doing, it should be very easy to see and act on outside of you, like completely away from
Separate from
anything,
just what
your
she's
relationship
doing.
with them. Yeah.
you're 100% right. And if I pick up the phone, and I promise you, if I pick up the phone and I call my attorney and say, hey, can can we file contempt? It says right in the decree that we cannot move these children without the consent of both parents. He'll say, we can never win that in court. They won't touch it.
What the
They
frick
will
is the
not touch
decree for?
the decree. I'm a toilet paper. The decree. If anybody who gets married, and I could, and now this again is not gender based. A man could do it too, but women are better at it. I think honestly, I do. They've learned that, you know what? If I just don't follow this, if I do whatever the hell I want, and they're smart enough to know that they can, you have to make it look as though it's the child's choice. You know, that the child is choosing not to see dad. But who would choose to see someone that you've created a narrative that this guy's dangerous?
Yeah.
They're not going to go see that guy.
Yeah.
Okay, just a year, not even a year. Here's another example. So my daughter, Gabby, the one who's moved, she was really needed me. She was reaching out to me. We're talking quite a bit. I'm like, this is ridiculous, Gabby. I'm going to break these. I'm not supposed to see my daughters because the one girl, this isn't a court order. I have an attorney who said, do not go near them because they'll lie. You can go to jail. Like
worse.
you can go to jail for the rest of your life. This is a serious charge. Don't go near them. And I'm like, screw this. I love my daughter's struggling, Gabby. I said, just call me when the rest of the girls are out of town at a volleyball tournament, and I'll drive to Iowa and see you. So I drive to Iowa. I'm with my two sons. My two sons are back from college. We all go to Iowa, and I'm going to take Gabby. I'm going to get 24 hours to take Gabby, hang out for a day. I'm going to get to take her for frozen yogurt and do the stuff we used to do. And she's ecstatic. I get into town, and I check the phone records, and there's a 10-minute call to my son, Rocky. I'm picking up Gabby at, say, 11 o'clock. And from 10:50 to 11 o'clock, Rocky gets a phone call from his mother. When I get there, Gabby and I are out in the front yard. We're playing with the dog. We're waiting for Rocky and Bo to come out of the house, and we're going to get in my car, and we're going to go. Rocky and Bo are going to go lift, and Gabby and I are going to go for ice cream. And Rocky goes, Gabby, come with me. Mom called my sons and said, you can't let Gabby get in the car with your dad. My own sons.
Oh my gosh.
True fucking story. You can't make that shit up.
It's awful.
So imagine what that did to all three kids.
Oh yeah. Well, and it just, like with every other thing, increases the narrative, increases the data that they collect in their head to support what's being said.
Whereas where you're trying, you're making an effort in that moment. It looks. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut in on you, April. It just looks. It's frustrating as hell to hear that the more effort you make, the worse it looks almost.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. So, yeah, I knew because people say, well, why did you leave town? And I said, well, and I'm not sure I did it, but I made a conscious decision that my prayer was that as long as I was omnipresent and I was trying to take the kids to practice, the narrative was so vile and so, and it was all false, but you can't disprove a negative. So, so I just thought, well, if I'm not there, she's not going to slam me. and which was true. It really helped. And it's kind of ebbed and flowed. I've gotten kind of into their lives a little bit, and they're like this. Gabby would call me all the time, and we would snap and do all these sorts of things. But since her mother put the hammer down when I went there, and this was just maybe 4 months ago, all communications has gone silent again.
There's
yeah.
no,
Oh, she.
Go ahead.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
you're good.
Oh, yeah, there's no due process at all. So
No.
so anything that's said, it doesn't even have to be proven.
No.
It's just
No,
It's not even guilty till proven
insane.
innocent. It's just guilty.
Yeah.
you're just
That-
guilty. There's no.
Just-
Well, and you can't do the guilty till proven innocent thing because you'd never prove anybody innocent.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
that's
you don't
why
even-
our standard is the opposite. It's 100%
But you
why our
don't even-
standard is the opposite.
You don't even get the chance to defend yourself because, again, like you said, it just makes you look worse.
Yeah.
Steven asked a good question. He
Yeah.
said, can you petition the court to see where and how she's spending child support money?
Absolutely not. You have zero. That is a good question. You have no, because I offered to emancipate him. I'm like, look, I don't see him anyway. I'll give up all my parental rights. I have no parental rights right now. I supposedly, I have joint custody. I'm supposed to have say over where they go to church. She changed the church. She's changed the schools. She sent them to private. So she sent them to a private school now. And that's why she's coming back for more. She wants me to pay for this decision that we'd already covered in the decree 7 years ago. And took them I moved them into the finest district in the state on purpose, so that they would be anyway. So, but the answer is no. I have no say. In fact, the money, the way it works is they garnish your wages, and the money goes to another state account, and the state gives her the money. And then once she gets the money, she can do whatever the heck she wants with it. So that they can track so they can track me. They don't track. And here's the other thing. Okay, so let's say she gets $20,000 a year from me. We'll just pick a number. Let's say it's $20,000 a year. Now, do you think that cost me $20,000, or do you think that I have to pay taxes on that money, right? So that's costing me, say, $30,000 to give her those $20,000. Do you think she gets taxed on that money? No. So she gets
Pure income.
pure income, cash income that I'm paying. So I'm paying 30 and she's benefiting 30
Yeah.
because she gets actually more than that because she doesn't have to pay taxes on it.
Yeah.
It's the whole system is insane. And then now 7 years later, I mean, I've lived in my car. I've been homeless. I've lived in, and I've had to reinvent. I had to change my career at 57 years old, finally get myself going. And she feels entitled to go back to court and ask for more money. And the court, and I talked to them, they'll probably give it to her.
It's a calculation, though. It's just a percentage calculation, no?
No, the
In
judges
Nevada, it's a hard percentage calculation of the difference of your income.
the difference
time.
of the
And-
two parties' income.
Correct. And if you have joint custody,
Right,
like a
but
5% something.
yes, and we do have joint custody, but but then she
Random?
says, well, I don't ever, like I said, I haven't seen my three daughters in
Yeah.
3 years. And not because I want to make this clear, not because I don't want to. Trust me, I would even, okay. And I live 5 hours away. It doesn't matter. I was coaching college football because I did have them till they were like 10 and 12. And so I was up in Wisconsin. I would coach, let's say, I would drive down there. I'd practice at 3 p.m. I would drive to Des Moines 5 hours, pick them up, drive back 5 hours, go to my game, and then drive them back. She would refuse to meet me. So then I would drive them back to Des Moines. So I would drive 20 hours in a weekend so that I could see my kids. And then she would pull, this is my favorite of all time. So she's a volunteer coach for one of my daughter's teams, and they're playing in Minneapolis, which is about an hour from my house in Wisconsin. And so I drive over there, watch them, and then I bring them back to my house. And it's exciting for me because I've only got to drive an hour to see the kids. Now she's a coach, and she's paid, like she's been doing this for years. So on Sunday, I go back, take the kids back to watch them play, and the coach of their team's not there, which is my ex-wife. Well, she went home because something came up. She had to go home. She did this so that I would have to now drive the kids all the way to Des Moines 5 hours and back on Sunday after they were done playing, so that I couldn't go to my night coaching meeting.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's so after going through all of this, it's really a nightmare. Like really, and like you said, not just for you, this will have such repercussions on your children, which has to be heartbreaking. Like, and you can't do anything.
Right. I've never felt so alone and helpless.
Yeah.
In all of my life, because I saw a counselor in Eau Claire, Wisconsin one day, and I said, I'm just sick about this, and he said, well, talk to me, what are you concerned with? I said, well, I have these beautiful children, and they're talented academically and athletically, and they're doing these good things, but I just know they're not going to quite reach the potential because they have this void. They don't have a dad. They don't, and some of the good qualities I have, they're ashamed to embrace. They don't want to have that as part of who they are. And he said, that's not your problem. He said, your concern is you're going to have 3 narcissists. He said, those 3 girls are going to grow into having narcissistic personality disorders. And that was when I shuddered with horror as to really the depth of what was, I lived it for 4 years, and I thought, well, they're going to underachieve a little bit. I feel bad for them. He's like, no. It's way more serious than that. And that's why I think I'm willing to come on here. Something needs to be done to protect these children, because think about if this was your child, and your child would then grow up to have zero empathy, to be completely self-serving, be willing to use people and throw them away, just as a tool to fuel their narcissistic tank that they need to fill, and then when they're done, they dispose of you. Who would want that for a child?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, this is really serious stuff.
Totally. And so, what advice would you give anyone who's just maybe starting this unfortunate journey and maybe feeling at risk of some of the things that you've gone through?
The first thing I would say would be to educate yourself. I was totally naive. I had no idea about anything. I really believe people are inherently good. I'm a complete weenie. I mean, I think everybody's great, and and I would have never believed that someone in my inner circle would turn and betray other people in my inner, that wouldn't even care about their own children. And so, but once I educated myself, I could see the patterns. I couldn't see the patterns until I understood the weaponry that was being used, that it's not normal. Like when I have tickets to take my daughters to University of Minnesota volleyball, big deal. They're ranked in the top 10 in the country. My daughters love volleyball. And all of a sudden my youngest daughter says, I don't know if I can come, Dad. I go, well, what do you mean? I mean, this is exciting. And she's like, well, I play at lunch at school. Now she's in fifth or sixth grade. At lunch at school, we play volleyball. And he's like, I'm the best player on the team. And if I'm not there at lunch, my team's not going to win. Where did that come from?
Huh. That's
What
weird.
that's the conversation her mother had with her. Oh,
Yeah.
you're going to go see your dad this weekend? Well, how's your team going to win at lunch at volleyball? Can you
So,
imagine doing that to a child?
so noticing those things
So now I know
from the very beginning.
that's not coming out of a 10-year-old girl's mouth.
Yeah.
That's an adult is feeding.
Steering it.
Yeah. So now I know and I can anticipate, you know, my children will never see me unless there's something in it for them. So I have
Yeah.
to creatively say, okay, hey, would you be interested in going to Arizona for, something cool? Yeah, I'll do that. So now I might get 3 days with them. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Otherwise, I'm not getting them.
Yeah.
And so, it just taught me, I would also, the other advice would be do not go through the court system. I've lost 100% of the time I've tried to do it the right way.
Yeah.
100%. And I kept giving up money. And again, maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm the unluckiest guy in America, but I don't think it works. And I think it's broken. And I would tell anybody who's on the wrong side of that, stop giving them money. You know what? Do this. I'm going to tell my story because this will be the first time that anyone's heard the other side of this story. Everybody thinks that I'm the villain. That I'm this horrible human being and that she's the victim. And that's the weaponry of the covert narcissist is be the victim and then you project all of your stuff on the other person. And and again, I didn't know what that was. I literally went, thank God I was coaching in a university so I could go to our counseling department and say, here's what I'm going through. Can you help me with this? And they explained it to me and I'm like, oh my, and it was so once they told me what the patterns were, I was like, oh my gosh, but I had no idea. I thought I'm telling you, this is why look up the statistics. In split homes, there is of the suicide rate in divorces, 80% men. 80% men. This is why. You get to the point where you can't. I mean, my life. The reason I started a story with, all I wanted to be was a dad. That was it.
Yeah.
I gave up my career. I gave up everything gladly to be a dad. And that's not the narrative that's supported in our family court system at all.
Yeah. And again, it's the same place I feel like we come to on most episodes is that the system is broken. The system is broken and doesn't support people.
Yeah.
No.
And
there's not an easy fix.
It won't for a while.
It won't.
And maybe never unless we break it down to, community level stuff and getting it away from trying to cookie cutter everything.
Yeah, just to make things easier. Because it's not easier. It's easier for them, the court system, but not for who they say they're trying to protect.
They're not protecting the kids, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And my hope and prayer for coming out like this publicly would be to say, at this point in our society, there's clear social discourse everywhere. So why don't we utilize this social discourse for good?
Oh yeah.
And stand up and say, hey, this is unacceptable to us and start to bring pressure to bear to these systems that are broken and say, we're not going to adhere to this crap anymore. And we're smarter than this. We're going to listen to there's, like I said, you can disbelieve everything I said here today, but you can do the research and you would find that the chances of 5 children moving away from somebody who is the fun guy and is the high energy guy and is the guy that it wouldn't happen without another parent. And so, intervening. And so if that's the case, is this acceptable to us as a society? And it would be like I say to my, I haven't said it to my children. Well, I have 2 that are in their 20s now. And I've told them that really, and I was wrong. I told them, if you just stand up to your mom and say, I'm not doing it, she loses all her power. But that's not true, because I've seen one of my sons stand up to her and say, I'm not doing this. And there was like this, I watched it. It was this almost like a nervous breakdown, just speaking almost in tongues of just craziness coming out, yelling at him, yelling at me. And it's not worth it to a kid.
Yeah.
I mean, he was I had given him a car so that he could drive to see me. And she called the attorney, I don't want him driving to see him. And the attorney's like, well, whose car? And well, it's his car. And the attorney's like, you have nothing. The only thing you have to say is if it was your car, and you could say you can't take the car. So the next weekend, she took my car, had it towed away, trashed it, and bought every kid a car.
Wow. With literally your money.
Yep.
Yeah, and it seems like that's a huge issue, especially with all the systems in place, like we have for food stamps and such, where that money is monitored if it has a specific purpose. And I'm not advocating for this, because none of this should get to this point. But we have all the system, all the resources are available to make sure that money's being used appropriately. Like that part's insane. I mean, it's all insane, but
once these kids hit to be 13 or something like that, to me, I should be able to take whatever their share is and electronically transfer it somewhere to where they have a debit card. These kids all have 13 have a debit card, and I am happy to give them the money. Happy to give them. I'm not arguing that at all. But I don't like to go see my kids at a tournament. They're wearing the same clothes they've been wearing for 5 years, but their mother has a Louis Vuitton purse and a matching quarter zip and matching shoes, and that are $300 each. And every day of the tournament has a new outfit.
Yeah.
And my kids then I got to hear about my kids aren't getting enough money. I need more money from you. My kids aren't wearing fancy purses.
Yeah. You see, it seems so obvious, and like there is actually so much proof. It just would take effort to see.
Yes.
And the courts are not into effort, apparently.
They're not incentivized.
Well, it's not that.
Not properly incentivized.
They're not, because in fact, they're incentivized the opposite. If I were, and I have been, but I figured it out, because I'm vigilant. I would appeal. Okay, who wins on that? Who wins on every one of these appeals? The lawyers.
Oh,
the
yeah.
court system. The court system wins. So they're incentivized not to let my children win or me win, not to help us, because the minute they help us, the revenue stream dries up.
Stops.
If they don't help us, there's a potential for a revenue stream going forward indefinitely. That's some scary stuff.
Yeah, and the government has so much more control than anybody realizes.
Right.
Yeah, and like you said, hopefully conversations like this will at least start more conversations. And unfortunately, like Aaron says, there, we we probably won't see changes in our lifetime.
But that's why we're here. I
No.
mean, that's why we do
Yeah.
this.
Yes, that is why
Is to
we're here.
find these conversations that need to happen, and just start
Start them.
something. Something has to start somewhere, and the only place we can start is talking about it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I appreciate you guys giving me a platform to because I'm sure I'm not the only guy going through this.
Oh yeah. Definitely
Can
not.
confirm.
You know, right?
Yeah.
So
We really appreciate you being on and vulnerably sharing your story and benefiting, yeah, guys out there who are going through this struggle, or anyone really who's dealing with the court
Right.
system or any system, can probably feel your pain and being stuck in that cycle of nowhere.
it's rough.
Yes.
Yeah. So, man, the negative ones are hard.
I know.
Normally, it's more playful.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. I really hope that as your kids age that you can rebuild those relationships, because that's the best. It seems like the best option you've got
That's- yeah.
is that you're never gonna give up,
Nope.
right? So you've
You're
got
exactly right.
all the chips are on your side outside of the court system.
Absolutely. I have little cards, just 4x6 note cards, and I they could be getting through, but I try to write my daughters like once a week in handwritten notes, all three of them, and I just send them, and you just like you say, I'm not going to give up. I want them to know that I love them and that I want to be part of their lives. And, it's like my daughter Peyton graduates from high school this weekend. I'm not invited, but I don't care. I'm gonna show up. And my guess is I'll not see her. I'll not spend, but I don't care. She'll
Yeah.
know. I'll make sure she knows I'm there.
Yeah. Yeah, eventually they'll hopefully see through that. And we also send you and your family so much prayers and vibes for your
Oh,
father.
Thank you.
And thank you for taking this time, even though you're in the midst of that.
Well, this is important, and I think, and you know what, my dad's been sick. Here's the grandparents lose their grandkids as well.
Yeah.
This
Is it-
this goes. We've got a really uniquely amazing family here of all my siblings and their grandkids, and they've
Mhm.
lost out on their cousins. Oh,
Yeah.
a lot of people. So this is serious stuff, and it
Yeah.
needs to be. And I need to speak up. These people need. It's like anything else in life. If you allow the darkness to persist, evil wins.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you are willing to spread the light, darkness has a tough time surviving in light.
Yeah.
So I'm going to speak, and it's scary because there's always repercussions every time I do this, but I don't care.
Yeah.
It's got to be done because
Yeah.
it's not just my situation. I know there are other situations out there like this, and somebody has to stand up or it'll
Yeah.
never end.
Absolutely. Thank you for spreading your light.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. I thank you for sharing your story, and I hope somebody else watching can get strength from you who may not have the strength themselves to fight through it.
It's hard, and I would say that's a great point. And I would say to anybody, don't hesitate to reach out to me if you are, and I mean this sincerely because I've been there. I've been, where you're thinking of self-harm, you're thinking of horrible things, and it's real. I get it. There's no more helpless feeling than knowing your child is in trouble and you can't help them. You can see them and you can't get to them. It's a horrible, horrible existence. And so if you're going through it and you need just someone to listen, I, you know, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'd be happy to. I've been there, and I would have loved for somebody to listen. So I'm certainly willing to do that.
Awesome.
Yeah,
That's
so-
very generous. And Tony's information is below.
Yeah, Tony Lombardi _20. And you'll see it in the ads too if you go to the Facebook or YouTube. And I know, I'm sorry everybody, we ran a little long, but this is important. Something important to talk about, and really reinforces everything that if there's something worth talking about, be open, but also be passionate and talk about it. Next week we're gonna be dark for Memorial Day, right? Yep.
Yep.
I
think it sounds so like high class when you say we're gonna be dark, not just we're taking a week off.
was born and raised in Vegas. We're gonna be dark.
We're gonna be dark
That's how
next
it
week.
is. That's why. But and then the week after that, what are we back with?
Oh my gosh, I don't know. I know we have some great guests coming up.
Oh,
One
it's play-based learning and early childhood development
Oh,
with Valerie Pirro.
yes.
Which should be fun. But we'll see y'all then. Please like, share, subscribe. Now more than ever, share with anybody you know who might be going through some stuff and need some support. And I don't even know what to say. Like it's. But like we always say, we'll see you next time. And in the meantime, have meaningful conversations.